Welcome to a special session this week in Missouri Politics, talking about the upcoming special session that starts tomorrow. And we're here with the senator at the middle of everything, the person, probably the leading pro-life advocate in the Senate, Senator Bob Onder. Welcome back to This Week in Missouri
Politics.
Politics.
It's great to be back, Scott. Thank you for having me.
It is abortion is a very emotional issue,
yes.
But sometimes when you get to the state regulation, it's very complicated. What is the actual difference going to be with the bill you're going to promote during special session?
Yeah, well, I believe we need a special session for a couple of reasons. One is that pregnancy care centers in Missouri, especially the city of St. Louis, are under attack. Unfortunately, a few radical politicians in the city of St. Louis a couple of months ago passed an abortion sanctuary city bill.
What is a pregnancy care center for people that don't know?
So a pregnancy care center, often called a maternity home or an alternatives to abortion center, a crisis pregnancy center, a number of different terms, are really there to help women, to care and love them, to help them choose life for their unborn child. Pregnancy care centers will do things like help women get prenatal care, help them get jobs.
Is there one we might know of? Is there a name of the home? What is
well, the most prominent one right now, because they are actually suing the city of St. Louis over this abortion sanctuary city bill, is Our Lady's Inn. But others.
And how would they be? How are they affected right now?
Other Birthright's another one. They would be affected because the bill is written in such a vague and all-encompassing way that they could be forced to hire abortion advocates, people who don't share their mission, to work for them. They could also be sued over real estate matters. They could be accused of discriminating against people who are pro-choice or even not paying for abortion as part of their health care. So really, we think pregnancy care centers are under attack in Missouri, and we need to protect them.
So it's an interesting thing to me. You see a lot of the media that are very surprised Republicans enact pro-life, pro-gun legislation. One of the first things that we ever did at This Week in Missouri Politics was a debate you were nice enough to come into in your Senate race. You were extremely clear. You were pro-life, pro-gun.
That's right.
The majority of the state votes overwhelmingly for pro-life people,
That's
and
right.
they would enact pro-life policies. It doesn't seem like it should be a surprise to many people that pay attention to your campaigns.
Well, that's right. The abortion sanctuary city law is a very radical left, narrow, national agenda item, and no one should be surprised if the Missouri legislature is going to stand by while pregnancy care centers, but also the Archdiocese of St. Louis, on behalf of their public schools, also joined in that lawsuit I mentioned. The other aspect is a unelected federal judge, unfortunately struck down some common sense regulations that have governed the operation of clinics in Missouri for 31 years, and we've essentially created a regulatory desert where your flu shot kiosk can be regulated, but a clinic that does invasive surgical procedures cannot be. So we need to restore and propose some common sense health and safety regulations to protect Missouri women, and that'll be part of the call and part of the bill next week as well.
Let's talk briefly about, you've had one special session that just wrapped up. Now you're going into another one. This one provided legislation to open, hopefully, a steel smelter down in the Boot Hill.
Right.
It looked to me like that was complex legislation, but you guys worked through it pretty quickly.
Right. I think it was complex, but at its core, it really did something pretty simple, which is that the Public Service Commission is the agency that regulates utility rates in the state of Missouri. It gave the PSC the ability to negotiate a competitive rate that will help a steel smelter and maybe help the old Noranda aluminum plant reopen. And it gave the PSC directions, including looking at the marginal cost of service. So I think it's going to be a win-win even if the smelter or the aluminum plant are offered very favorable rates. As long as they cover the fixed costs, it could be a win for every consumer.
So you were in favor of that legislation.
I was in favor.
You're going to be a key player in this legislation. When they say extraordinary sessions, the argument I've heard mostly, I don't heard a lot of argument against or serious attempts to kill the bill in the special session this week. But the argument you're hearing from some Republicans are, this is not extraordinary, or maybe this one might be, but there's very few parts where they're extraordinary.
Yeah.
The governor certainly hints he's going to call more. Where do you think the line should be drawn?
Yeah. Well, of course, I, like many other legislators, have a job, have a family, I have a medical practice. So I believe that extraordinary sessions, special sessions, should be called when, not only when issues are important, but when they're urgent. And I think clearly protecting the health and safety of Missouri women and protecting pregnancy care centers rises to that level of urgency.
Was it the federal court ruling? Does that add to the urgency in your estimation?
Well, that's right. The final federal court ruling was only on May 2nd, and then the lawsuit, which I think pointed out to a lot of us just how dangerous the abortion sanctuary city ordinance is, that was filed on May 22nd. So it is urgent. It is new. We can't wait a whole year to protect the health and safety of women. So I think clearly the special session on the issue of life does rise to that level of importance.
The first part, dealing with the city of St. Louis, was discussed during session. There was some debate on it.
Absolutely.
There were other bills that were discussed that didn't pass.
That's
Are
right.
there other bills you think are such an extraordinary circumstance they can't wait till January?
Well, you know, you'd have to look at that case by case, Scott. Again, I think not only should a bill be important, but there should be some level of urgency. You know, the governor, of course, has said that everything's on the table. Ultimately, he'll have to decide what meets that standard. I think his standard is the same as mine in that regard, and I'll just leave him to decide that.
In the Senate leadership
I
room,
really
though,
don't see a lot of special sessions. I really don't. Some people have speculated about 5, 6, 7. Of course, Governor, if we think we have it bad in Missouri, Governor Abbott in Texas just called a special session for July. His call is going to have 19 items.
Ooh.
And that's going to include a pro-life bill, school funding, school choice, and even a bathroom bill.
Gosh, how much do they do during regular session? My goodness.
So they're working hard in Texas.
Let's talk about something that did get done during session, the rideshare bill that you carried. How is the implementation of that going?
Yeah, I was really honored to be able to carry that bill. Kirk Matthews, of course, was the House sponsor. It's going great. Ride sharing, both Uber and Lyft, are in full operation in my own county, St. Charles County, as well as St. Louis City, St. Louis County. But even the smaller markets like Joplin and Poplar Bluff, it's really going great.
I saw the speaker got in the first one.
Yeah,
Uber down in Poplar Bluff not too long ago.
That's right. Of course, you probably saw the governor's video where he drove through a Taco Bell in order to chalupa.
As you can tell, I'm a Taco Bell guy.
There you go. I am
like
too.
it.
I am too. Yeah, I saw the speaker was in an Uber. During inauguration week, I rode an Uber in Jeff City.
Yep.
And I'll be taking it to the Zoofari next week. I'll be Ubering. But yeah, it's going great. Ride-sharing companies provide a service that the public wants, create thousands of jobs. We're really excited about it.
Let me ask you one thing about politics now. I know it's a while off, but you're in Senate leadership. You're one of the ones trusted with maintaining the Republican majority.
Right.
You see Donald Trump in the news every day.
You
now, I'm just a simple hillbilly from West Butler County. I don't see a lot of folks in rural Missouri turning on the president yet. But as you look to 2018 and some of the competitive races, do you see the president being he was clearly a help during the general. Do you see him being a help this general election?
Yeah, of course, on November 8th, Donald Trump won the state by almost 20 points. That was a huge boost to Republicans.
Or some would say huge.
Huge. And we were rewarded with supermajorities, and a Republican governor swept the statewide offices. But as you said, Scott, I think Trump's base is still very much with him. I don't think we see many people in Butler County, or for that matter in my district,
do you get concerned, though, in a St. Charles County to lose some support? Because I think if you're looking for a barometer, a St. Charles County, West St. Louis County might be places you would look. So far, are you picking up any of that yet?
So far, I'm not picking up a lot of that. You know, I don't think, Scott, that there is any evidence that the Russians changed a single vote. They didn't hack into a single election machine. And yeah, there are Russian hackers, who hacked into campaign accounts. But for that matter, there are Chinese and Azerbaijani hackers trying to hack into things every day. For all I know, my kids are in the basement trying to hack into your account right now, Scott.
It probably wouldn't take hard. It's Cardinal fan, 24.
I think at the end of the day, it's going to be much ado about nothing. I'm really optimistic about the 2018 midterms.
Well, Senator, thank you for joining us.
Thank
on
you,
This Week in Missouri
Scott.
Politics.
It's great to be here.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much.
We'll be right back with two much anticipated debuts, Chuck Hatfield and Vervis Jones, after this.
My name is Eric Philippi. I'm a veteran, a carpenter, and a father. When Eric Greitens said he was going to change politics as usual, folks like me didn't think the first thing he'd do as governor was take dead aim at our jobs and our families' livelihoods by working to repeal prevailing wage. Call Governor Greitens. Tell him to protect prevailing wage and to protect my family, not destroy it.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
Nobody likes power outages, including us. That's why Ameren, Missouri is investing in new equipment and smarter technology to reduce outages and keep pace with future needs. And it's working. We're in the top 25% in the nation for reliability. And on average, our rates are 18% lower than other Midwestern states. Making sure the power's there when you need it. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to a special session edition of This Week in Missouri Politics. We are joined by a friend of the show, Jack Spooner. Welcome back, sir.
Great to see you.
Rising star on the Republican Party. I noticed the beard's a little trim for summer, right?
A little bit. I had to go back to the courthouse, so I trimmed it up a little bit. It looked more presentable.
Representative Nick Shore, welcome back, sir. The first time on the show, Mr. Vervis Jones. Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics, sir.
Glad to be here.
And a guy that everyone in Jeff City knows. Now we're going to take this mug statewide. Mr. Chuck Hatfield, glad to have you, sir.
Thank you, Scott. Glad to be here.
Let's start off. The second special session this year starts off about abortion. There was a city ordinance passed by the city of St. Louis that we all know about that dealt with abortion and created a semi-special class. Now there was a federal court ruling. Can you kind of walk folks through what the court ruling is and what you expect to see?
So the court ruling has to do with requiring these abortion centers to have certified referring privileges for doctors. And this is an issue that's been going on all over the country. Arkansas has a case at the 8th Circuit right now. Arkansas's law was struck down. Missouri has the same law, requiring abortion clinics to have referral privileges into a hospital.
Let me ask you a question. Since Arkansas's law was struck down and Missouri's is the same law, is Missouri still in effect?
Missouri's is suspended right now. There was
an
injunction issued by Judge Sachs over in Kansas City. And there are several issues with these ambulatory surgical centers. This has been going on for several different years. So the governor's call for special session, has a list of, I think, 13 different items, 8 of which really deal with how to regulate ambulatory surgical centers and what the requirements are going to be on ambulatory surgical centers. So the courts are looking at the balancing test that comes back from Roe versus Wade. The courts have said a woman has a right to privacy, which was a little controversial at the time. And so a woman has a right to have an abortion. At the same time, the state has a right to protect an unborn fetus, an unborn child. And so the courts balance those rights. And lately, the states have been trying to regulate a little more aggressively the woman's right to have the abortion, and the courts have been pushing back on that. And this is just a continuation of that debate.
Mr. Jones, it's an interesting thing. Cities look like more and more, especially the city of St. Louis, is trying to set their own rules on social policy, economics. Where's the right? When do they go too far in that?
I don't know. I think that's a matter for courts. But I think that what cities are feeling is that, especially St. Louis and Kansas City, because, those are the two probably liberal cities in the state of Missouri, and the state of, that the state of Missouri doesn't reflect the constituency. We look at the voting patterns, and I think so a lot of, you've got a lot of people who are in city government who believe that the state is that some of them believe that St. Louis ought to secede from the from the state of Missouri. But I think that they go too far, I think, for instance, there's a contradiction here. The contradiction is that, we ought to have home rule, and cities ought to have home rule, and St. Louis ought to take care of itself. But when we do take care of ourselves, when we do try to pass laws that deal with, say, minimum wage or discrimination within the city limits, we get, the state of Missouri. For instance, there's this big movement now by Ron Richards to talk about, passing state laws to make the city and the county merger. Now they're going to be county Republicans who are going to be totally against that, but they're not against the state coming in and saying you can't have rules on abortion, you can't have minimum wage laws. So I mean, it's probably going to be something that's going to wash out, I think, at some point. What's the balance? I don't know. I mean, I think we're in for a rough ride for the next, years ahead.
Jack Spooner, Republicans are for local control, except all the times they're not. It seems like, especially this session. Do Republicans run the risk? I mean, I think frankly, the state's very pro-life. They elect pro-life Republicans. It's always been a conundrum to me that Republicans say they're pro-life, pro-gun on every possible way they can when they run for office. Then they win in ever larger numbers, and they do pro-life, pro-gun things. But do they risk going too far?
I don't think they risk going too far. I mean, there's usually checks and balances, and you always have to look at the economic impact some of these decisions are going to have on the state. And I think at the end of the day, we're becoming more aware on these decisions, how they're going to affect us economically. We've seen it play out in other states where they've passed laws and they've had severe economic consequences. So I don't think our legislature and our Republican governor is going to let that happen to the state of Missouri.
Make sure I watched last session. It wasn't the Senate, it wasn't an executive branch, it was the House of Representatives that checked some social policies that they thought might be either poorly constructed or go too far. On an abortion bill, my assumption is you could pass an abortion bill through the House of Representatives in 20 minutes. Is there anybody in that room saying, hey, let's be sure we do this right and not overreach?
Yeah, I think through the vetting process that we have great leadership with Todd Richardson, Mike Searpoy. In caucus, we vet a lot of these issues before we even bring them up to see, if we're doing it correctly. And I know with the board bill on abortion from St. Louis, there were some Democrats or even some Republicans saying, hey, local control, should we overstep our bounds, so to speak? People like me were saying, let's look at the economic impact. Let's look at the black letter of the law that they're putting in place in the city of St. Louis, which could affect a landowner's ability to decide who's going to come in and rent his property. And when you're infringing upon certain rights, such as property owner rights, I think that's when the state needs to step in. You look at the minimum wage thing, that was the same mindset applied to that is, are these businesses going to flee? And there was talk of where would they flee? Would they come to St. Charles County? But there was a little bit of talk on the floor of, let's welcome them to St. Charles County. Let's let St. Louis do whatever they're going to do. And if, for the record, if St. Louis is going to secede from the state of Missouri, I will file something to let the Cardinals stay in the state of Missouri.
No, that's solid policy.
Yeah, absolutely. Despite their record right now, still love the Cardinals.
Jack Spooner is a Federalist, though. Do you not have some degree of local control you want to give? And do you worry maybe Republicans are going too far?
You want to give as much local control as you can without the ripple effect starting to take in other issues. So you have to be very careful, especially this day, in terms of how much local control you're going to give. So I think we're doing a good job of considering those factors. And again, as we watch our neighbors and see how those issues affect them, it helps us in making our determinations in terms of moving forward.
But this issue of property rights, though, I mean, property rights also said that people could deny, people to rent because of race. Mm-hmm. I mean, so, where do we go with that? I mean, so I think we have to balance it, and so, I mean, I don't want to say absolutely can a property owner do what he wants to do. I mean, that's the law is pretty clear on that. You can't.
Yeah, but the board bill, I think when I looked at the board bill, it stated that a property owner, let's say you have a vacant lot in the city of St. Louis, if you want to rent and you're taking applications, Planned Parenthood comes in and you're a staunch Catholic like myself and say, look, my views don't mesh with you. I might like the person that you are. I don't really understand or agree with what you're doing, so I'm not going to rent to you. This board bill would ban that and make you rent to that person.
Well, a lot of people
though, what it says is you can't discriminate because of a reproductive choice they made.
Right.
Well, and I don't have the board bill in front of me. This is a six-page board bill or whatever it was, and this is something that we went through thoroughly on the floor to make sure we did
But there were
do it
people
right.
who used religion as a way to discriminate against people because of race too.
Well, absolutely.
I mean, in other words, I believe that people are inferior because of their race, and that's they would use the Bible
Or religion.
to religion.
Right.
So.
Yeah, but you're going back to what the Supreme Court in our Constitution has stated, is that there are certain protected classes that can't be discriminated against, such as age, race, religion, gender. Now they want now the city wants to create a protected class that doesn't exist.
The Supreme Court said abortion, though. The Supreme Court said you have a right to get an abortion.
No, the Supreme Court said that a woman has a right to, within the penumbras of their right to privacy and the right to choose. It didn't say that that the right to have an abortion, or if you had an abortion, that places you in a protected
All right,
class.
let's do predictions here. We all know that one of the easiest things to do in the entire state is to pass an abortion bill through the General Assembly. They'll pass an abortion bill, maybe 9, maybe whatever. Right. Do they get one that can withstand judicial review?
Not completely. Some of it will, but some of it will be struck down. That's
I
my
think we all know
prediction.
they pass a bill. Do they do something that can withstand judicial scrutiny?
I haven't seen one that's hold up yet.
Yeah. Can you pass a bill that will withstand judicial scrutiny?
I think we will. My prediction is Phil Cristofanelli's, another rep out of St. Charles County, his 20-week pain-capable ban.
I hate to agree with my counterparts over here, but I think that they're
standard's
right.
moving. I think you may rather.
And with the court system the way it is, it's hard to predict that we can keep a bill.
Let's talk about what is extraordinary. The governor has been very suggestive there'll be many of these special sessions. The one on economic development, that's very much in line with other special sessions we've had as a state. This one's a little different, but I would say you could pass an abortion bill on Christmas Eve in the Missouri legislature. What do you do? What else is extraordinary? And do you think there's a point where even the House says, look, we have a session in the Constitution for that?
I think, there's two lines of debate here. Some people agree or believe that, if you can't get it done during the regular session, unless it's an emergency situation, it doesn't need to be brought up because of the taxpayer impact. And although I voted against the the last bill, the Don Roan bill, I did do the balancing effect of, the cost that it's going to be on the state or the savings that we could get from all the new revenue, the tax revenue. Now this one's a little bit different. Now you've got pro-life issues, which a lot of people could say, what is the value of life? If this is going to cost taxpayers $60,000, what is the one life that we could save from one of these abortion bills coming through? So I don't know. I think it's up for debate what an extraordinary session could encompass, but I think pretty much anything related to healthcare, anything economic.
Does anything fit in a special session?
Look, as long as the governor is acting according to the law and he has the right to call special sessions, and he can govern how he wants to govern.
So again, what's going to change the dynamic if at the end of session you think if the governor supports my bill, I don't care if you kill it during regular session, I'll just bring it back?
Yeah, it may. So some states have these extra sessions they do every year. Kansas just did another one, and it's just become a routine. In answer to your previous question, I think the courts are going to say if the governor says it's extraordinary, it's extraordinary. It's a political question, is the language they use. So he can do it whenever he wants. But at some point, there's a reason that we have these traditions of, for example, not calling a special session. And some traditions are good, some traditions are bad, but I think it's a good tradition to not call a lot of special sessions, to only call them in a real
You've watched a lot of these things. I mean, is it good to have a full-time legislature?
I think so. I think they ought to stay. I like the Illinois model. I do. I don't, because the part-time legislation to me is, because I don't believe in term limits, and because I think that has created a lobbyist class as opposed to a legislative class. I think the lobbyists.
Like it's a bad thing. Go ahead.
Present company excluded, I'm sure.
And I think that when I used to go to the legislature back in the. Getting back to abortion, Democrats, you're right, you can pass an abortion bill in Democratic or Republican-controlled Missouri House. Missouri is a pro-life state.
John Schneider would sponsor it.
Absolutely, and every Democrat in the House and the Senate would vote for it. But I believe in a first, because I don't believe that, I have looked at the system now, and I think that 8 years, when I used to go up there and talk to a Jet Banks or a John Scott, I mean, these guys had institutional knowledge about what went on in the House, and you had I think you got better legislation. I think you got more legislation that was better thought out. And you wouldn't need special sessions because you had people who knew what they were doing. I mean, they would pass legislation. They would actually, get bills. You could just look at the legislative record when they had, more of we didn't have term limits. And I think term limits has created a serious gap in terms of the quality of the legislative body in terms of being able to produce.
Definitely changed things. Let me tell you another thing that's changed. That's dark money. I think it's the first time we've seen a dark money committee actually affiliated with a politician. Where is the line? You hear this word coordination. Right. What does coordination mean?
Well, that's a great question. So the Missouri Ethics Commission has an opinion from back last time we had term limits in the 90s. Everything old is new again. that basically says you're going to consider coordination on a case-by-case basis. So for those who are schooled on this, whether it's an in-kind contribution or whether it's an independent expenditure, they say we don't know. We're going to look at it case by case. They did talk about sharing vendors. Now the Federal Election Commission that has more authority to do regulations and all of that. They have a whole test called the conduct test that has sort of 4 parts, and it talks about not communicating the candidate's intent to the independent committee and those sorts of issues. I think you're probably going to see at least requests for ethics commission opinions on that very issue.
Personally, I think that I'm one of these people. I probably surprised Chuck. I don't believe in campaign finance reform at all. I mean, I don't think it limits. I think disclosure is the only really issue.
Yeah, I agree
Let
with
people know where the money's coming from. Because I mean, all you do is you get into all these machinations. All these laws, all these rules change every 5 minutes.
Well, I think the outcome, you have an intent to ban dark money, but what happens when you start throwing these convoluted laws or rules out there is you make more dark money. Because now you see all these different PACs popping up and you don't know where the money's coming from.
It's worse now than it was before because you got people, you don't know where the money's coming from.
Lack of transparency now as opposed to several years ago, it's insane.
Jack Swinner, do you think the legislature just steps in and addresses this and says this is what you can do, this is what you can't do?
Well, they should. I don't know that they're going to.
But it's up, your own governor. While you're here, I want to talk real quickly about, there's a thing all over Missouri you'll see scattered around, Confederate memorials to different folks. Your daughter, the city treasurer, spearheaded an effort to help move the one in Forest Park. What's that happened and what's the importance of that?
The importance is the symbolism. I mean, people would talk about how symbols don't mean anything. Well, then why do we put them up? Why do we put monuments up? I mean, if they don't mean anything, why put them up? I mean, that's the issue to me, and I think that
You put them up so you remember history.
Well, but remember, I don't need to remember that my family were descendants of
And
slaves.
I don't need to remember that my family went through the Holocaust. And you can't erase
but-
those
Well, I'm
symbols.
not trying to erase it. What I'm trying to say is that you don't memorialize slavery, and I think that's what those things do. Because they were put up by the Daughters of the Confederacy to memorialize slavery and try to change the history to say that it wasn't about slavery, and it was. The Civil War was about slavery. The Civil War was about states' rights. The right that they wanted was the right to own people and to own.
Give me a quick prediction on the more. Does this spread to other parts of Missouri?
Well, I don't know. I don't.
What do you think, Jeff?
Not rural Missouri. I don't.
Yes, it's happened before.
I think it probably does
Holden.
too. What do you think?
Yeah.
I don't know right now. It's spread across the nation, so I don't know what's going to happen.
Who won the week?
Well, I'm going to make a prediction that the Golden State Warriors are going to win the week. I think they're going to make history.
Who won the week?
I think my senator, I'm very proud of him, Dr. Bob Onder, getting the special session, staying on top of this pro-life issue, which is very important to our state.
Who won the week?
Comey.
I think Jay Ashcroft won the week. He rolled out a voter ID bill that is going to result in some people not being able to vote, and he explained it really well.
I will say your daughter, Tashara Jones, won the week. When you seen that crane moving that statue, she got out front early on that. Very interesting. I want to invite everybody else, hopefully to win next week. We're going to launch a new media product called the Clayton Times. We'd love everyone to join us at Cafe Napoli in the heart of downtown Clayton next Wednesday at 5. We're going to push the button and launch this. I hope to see you there. This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you by Spire and Sterling Bank.